Hey, welcome to the Skookumarts YouTube channel. Today we thought we would share with you an extensive list we've created of every piece of software we've ever used, going from pre-production all the way to releasing a video game. So let's get into the list.
So we've broken up this list into a few categories, and it is pre-production, production, marketing, project management, platform-specific software, and then just a handful of software that's on our radar that we haven't used but looks cool.
Okay, pre-production. Before you even open up your game engine, you need to start to visualize things with Photoshop and Blender. Make concept art with those two pieces of software.
Miro is what we use. It's like a digital whiteboard where we can just toss all kinds of ideas. It's this big mess of ideas for brainstorming.
PureRef is pretty much the same thing, but it's exclusively images. That way you can have a visual brain collection. Arc Studio, it is just for writing a screenplay. So there it is.
And then something really specific to this new game that we're working on is Replica Voice. It's text-to-speech voices.
Listen up.
That's not entirely true.
So for us, it's a way to create placeholder voices until later in production.
Google Earth. I used it a lot on our previous game, and I'm going to use it a lot on this next game. It's a really good resource for references. If you need to go to downtown Chicago and see what one of the streets looks like, go to Street View.
The last one that we have is SteamDB, and this is specifically for when we're initially starting up a game and we have a game idea. It's a really good idea to just kind of browse what other games are out there. So we use SteamDB to get a feeling of what's in the genre and everything.
All right, now we have a game idea that we really like and we're ready to move into production. So the first thing you're probably going to open is your game engine, which for us is Unreal.
The previous game that we created used Unity.
And then to start populating your game with 3D models and everything, our tool of choice is Blender.
And a recent addition to the 3D workflow for us is using Houdini, specifically to start populating the world through Houdini's kind of automation tools.
And yet another piece of software we're introducing to our workflow is Metashape, which is a photogrammetry piece of software. Yeah. So that's it for 3D. On to 2D. Our first one on the list is Photoshop. It's a go-to for textures.
And then Photoshop Lightroom. We really haven't used Lightroom too much, but it's really good if you have a lot of images that you want to do like mass edits on.
And then one that I used a lot on our previous game is if you want to just generate PBR materials quick, Materialize is a great resource for just taking a flat image and turning it into normal maps, height maps, metallic maps, so on. Okay, so on to animation. The first one is Blender, of course. They have some great animation tools, and it's just the best 3D package out there, so Blender, of course.
Another one for animation is Houdini, and we've added Houdini into the animation category because we're going to be using it for doing visual effects and simulations. Another recent addition to our software is Marvelous. We're going to be using Marvelous to do cloth simulations.
And then on to the more specific software for our game, which requires a lot of character animation and motion capture. So to start out that process, we're going to be using Vicon, and their proprietary software is called Shogun.
And then once we have the motion capture data, we clean that up and kind of stitch everything together in Motion Builder. Now on to the coding side of things. To start off with, we have Jetbrains Rider, which I just got into and it's really awesome. Another one is Visual Studio. I still use it on and off, but in the previous game we used Visual Studio exclusively. The next one is Unity and Unreal profiling. Now, even though they're technically part of Unity and Unreal, we've kind of separated them as their own software just because they're so expansive. So we thought that it kind of merited their own dedicated section. And another piece of software that we use extensively is when we're porting games for Xbox and PlayStation and consoles, and specifically, they have a lot of proprietary tools, and I don't think we're allowed to talk about them, so Xbox and PlayStation.
Okay, next category, plugins. One of my favorites that I've discovered recently is for Blender, and it's called Auto Rig Pro. I'm not a big fan of rigging, and Auto Rig Pro makes it a cinch to get a character up and going within minutes. The next one for Blender is Texel Density Checker. It is just a nice easy way to make sure that all of your textures are using the same texel density. You need it in your game. If you don't have it, you should.
Get it. So if you're using Unity, definitely check out these two plugins, Bakery and Rewired. Bakery is a way of alleviating the headache of doing light maps in Unity. This is a third-party plugin that you can get from the asset store, and it's great. The next one is Rewired. It is also on the asset store, and it makes doing inputs in Unity just awesome. So a plugin that I've been using for a few years now is a plugin called Vim. You can get this plugin for Visual Studio as well as Rider, and it just remaps your keys to this old style of programming, and it's kind of tricky to get started with, but once you do it, you'll never go back. The next one is the Houdini engine. This is a little bit different from Houdini. This is where Side Effects, the creators of Houdini, have broken out their core of Houdini and created this separate engine that can run in or that can run alongside Unreal or Unity, and it allows you to have some of the power of Houdini inside your game engine.
And the last one is FMOD. It took care of all of our audio needs. I'm not going to get into the details of it, but for sound engineers, it's a great tool. Next category, marketing. So if you're doing a lot of YouTube and social media sharing your game, one of the invaluable pieces would be your iPhone. Using Twitter, using your email, even recording. That's what we're using here, using our iPhones to record with. And then once you have videos that you want to share on YouTube or social media, we use DaVinci Resolve to edit all of our videos together. And yet again, for any image editing or creating GIFs or whatever, Photoshop is a great resource. For making presentations, pitch decks, InDesign is probably really the only good resource for doing that kind of thing. Because we're recording things with our iPhone, which is MOV, we record our screens, which is MP4. We have all these different file types. We use Handbrake to compress or change the file type. And then obviously everybody uses Shadowplay to share their screen or to record their screen, so there's that. And once you have a game that is presentable, you've got to have a website, and for us, we use Wix. There's just a lot of really cool options to make unique looking websites with Wix. And then obviously if you want people to contact you and say, hey, I want to give you $1 million, you need an email. So get that set up.
Yeah.
Which is Gmail, is what we use.
So to manage our project, we've actually been using Jira. It's very similar to other management software like Trello and everything. It has a little bit more features than Trello, but that's what we've been using recently. And then we have Perforce. That's what we're using for version control. So all of our files and whatnot within Unreal, they're being backed up and versioned with Perforce.
And then obviously, just like everybody else in the world, we use Google Drive for a lot of our file sharing and random spreadsheets. A lot of teams use Slack, but we kind of just use Discord because it's cool.
We also use Docker for a few different things. We actually have our Perforce server hosted in a Docker container running on our NAS, so we use that. Another one that's really specific to our situation is we have a Synology NAS, so they have this software feature called Synology Drive, and it allows us to basically mirror some of the folders that are on the NAS onto our local machine. So it just makes operating with the NAS easier.
Okay, last category. So I'm tired of making all of our textures exclusively in Photoshop. It's a lot of work, and I know everybody uses Substance Painter, but it's expensive, and I'm not a big fan of Adobe, so we thought, why not Quixel Mixer? It looks cool. It's on our radar, not sure if we're gonna use it, but I'm gonna try it out. The next one is pretty weird. We've only looked into it a little bit, but it's called Cascadeur. And because we're gonna be doing so much character animation, anything we can use to speed up that workflow and make things just look good for cheap, it would be great. Cascadeur looks like a really awesome resource. Who knows how well it works, but we're gonna be trying that out as well.
If you're on PC, might check out RenderDoc, especially if you're using Unity. I think Unreal has some more developed features for doing GPU capture and understanding what's happening on the GPU. But if you're using Unity, check out RenderDoc because it does look pretty sweet. The last piece of software that's on our radar is Overdub by Descript. This is competing with Replica Studio. This is like a text-to-speech. Overdub looks pretty sick. The audio that it generates is pretty primo, so we might have to look at this in the future.
And that's it. This is every single piece of software we've ever put our little fingers on. If you guys have any other pieces of software that you've used in terms of game development and you want to share with everyone, write it in the comments below. That's it from us. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next video.